let's talk about Obamacare, the health care law. That's kind of gotten a lot of attention here lately with the contraception controversy. And in your previous Senate campaign, you spoke out against Obamacare. Give us an update on your current reflections on the health care law, what you would do specifically to affect that, leave it in place if you were elected.
Yeah, and again, this was a big issue when I ran for the U.S. Senate, and I talked to different people. What I tried to do was go out and get a broad range from people that were without health care, people with these pre-existing conditions, whether they couldn't get health care, talk with doctors and others. And first of all, there's two problems you have. One is people who can't get health care, and then there's also the cost of health care. Obamacare was passed under the auspices that they were going to reduce the cost. And that's contrary. That's not happening at all. In fact, it's raising the cost tremendously. There are four things we could have done to reduce the cost of health care. One you hear about all the time is tort reform. Right now, we spend over $200 billion a year. I'm talking about doctors. They authorize medical procedures that cost over $200 billion a year because they're afraid they're going to get a lawsuit if they don't do that for malpractice. And because of that, that raises the cost of our health care. Second thing is, we don't have enough competition for health insurance here in the state of Nevada, or quite frankly across the country, but primarily here with the merger that happened with United Health Care. And anyways, there's only two major companies, so you don't have the competition to drive down the prices. Why don't we allow people to purchase health insurance across state lines like we do with life insurance and car insurance? More competition.
I always wondered about that. I never could figure out why we don't.
Yeah. The third thing is another simple concept. I mean, there's really simple concepts when you look at these things. Is Medicare, by federal law, is to be the payee of last resort. That means if you have Medicaid, that means if you have your private health insurance, that is supposed to be billed first, and then Medicaid pays what isn't covered. However, because of one reason or another, maybe the private insurance companies are declining the bill at first, and the doctors and hospitals don't want to pursue it, but they go back to Medicaid. And a lot of we're spending money to pay Medicaid expenses that should be being paid through the private insurance companies that are getting health insurance premiums for it. So go back and enforce that law. And then the fourth thing is, we need to do something to create an ability for people who don't have health insurance to be able to get treated. And that's a tough decision. Right now, people that don't have health insurance, if they have a serious illness, or for some, not even a serious illness, they go to the emergency rooms. And by federal law, they have to be treated, and you can't turn them away. And that's the most expensive place to have treatment. There are these private public co-ops that have worked really, really well. And I can't think of the name of them now, but there were two of them up in Reno, one in Carson City, one in Reno. There was two up north. And what they basically do is the federal government has provided these co-ops $1 billion. And what they do is they bring people in and they treat them, whether they're doctors that are volunteering the time, maybe some doctors that are retired. You charge people based upon if they can't afford anything, they don't pay anything. If they can afford something, you have a sliding scale. And they treat millions of people a year on it. Why don't we invest back through the private sector like that can provide treatment to people for that, instead of forcing people to buy insurance they don't want to buy, and forcing us to have insurance with certain companies that we don't want to have, but having to go to certain doctors we don't want to have. I don't believe the federal government has any business getting involved in our personal health care decisions. And there are other ways we could solve these problems than what Obamacare has done.
How do you feel about the recent controversial contraception? I think it's outrageous. I mean, and again, I know. In what way?
I know the Democrats are pandering to the women's vote, and they want to make this look like, hey, we need to protect the women's rights in this regards. But that's not what's happening here. What this regulation is requiring is a Catholic institution to provide contraceptives to people who work in their businesses, whether it's the church or the hospitals, whatever else, even though that's contrary to their religious beliefs. I mean, it's outrageous. How can you force a religious institution to do that? And they're talking about this kind of compromise that Obama did. It doesn't solve any problems. I mean, one of them is that a lot of these Catholic hospitals and other Catholic, they are self-insured. So when you're forcing on an insurance company, a lot of the Catholic institutions are self-insured, so they're having to pay for it anyways. Get out of trying to determine and regulate how religious organizations are supposed to handle their religious functions.
So do you think that is more a constitutional issue, or is it a medical issue, a medical insurance issue, or is it a women's rights issue? If you had to pick one of those three, which one would you pick that is the core of the controversy?
There's no doubt it is a religious issue and it's a constitutional right issue, because you're forcing religious institutions to pay for something that their religion prohibits. It's a religious issue. Now, does it affect the women's rights issues? Yes, it does. But there has to be another way to do it than forcing religious institutions to have to pay for this. It's wrong, and that's where it is. The Democrats have done this, and I said this a couple months ago when they first proposed this. They must have done some type of polling where they've said, hey, we need a certain segment of this voting bloc, and the women vote. So we're going to try to make this a women's issue, and they're trying to take the focus away from what you're forcing these religious institutions and doing. And you can't do that. You can't do one without, you can't ignore what they're forcing the religious institutions to doing by trying to say, okay, but we're taking care of another group of people. What are they going to do next? I mean, what, are they going to make you do something to violate another religion?
Okay. And while we're on religion, I guess that kind of segues right into what's going on this week in Afghanistan with the burning of the Korans, the unfortunate incident there, the unfortunate deaths of American soldiers as a result of that. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that issue. Take it into your thoughts and beliefs about the Afghanistan war. Even take it so far as to tell us whether you think it was appropriate for President Obama to apologize to the Afghanistan government for the incident.
Well, okay, first of all, with respect to the burning of the Korans, my understanding it was done accidentally. There was no malicious intent. So if there's no malicious intent, how do you apologize? Now, if the apology is going to be, hey, there was an accident that was done, we didn't intend to do it, that's fine. But when you're trying to make our soldiers look like they were wrong and criminals or malicious, that's not right. We need to support our soldiers completely. It's unfortunate that whether it's the Taliban or the extremists in Afghanistan have tried to turn this to make it look like Americans don't like Muslims because of an accident. But we have to do our best to explain exactly what happened. I think the apology helped inflame that and made people more mad at us. With respect to the Afghan war, I've been a big, and let's talk about the Iraqi war. I was against going into Iraq to begin with because I felt we had to go into Afghanistan and go after Osama bin Laden and get him and bring him to justice, either through death or trial, because of what he and the Al-Qaeda did in 9/11. I don't think we should have pulled troops out of Afghanistan to go into Iraq when that had nothing to do with the 9/11 incidents. I said when I ran for the U.S. Senate, we had an obligation and a duty to our country to go and get Osama bin Laden. But once we did, we had an obligation to get out of that country and not try to nation build. Well, Osama bin Laden has been killed. We should be out of that country. We should not be trying to nation build. It's never happened in Afghanistan, even if you believe in that policy, and we should be pulling those troops out immediately.
Okay. What would you do with them when they come back home? There is a difficult situation when they come back. Unemployment is still high. It's even higher for veterans. We have quite a large veteran population here in Mesquite. I'm interested to hear what you would do with all the returning soldiers.
I don't think there's any facet of our community that our government should take care of more than our soldiers who put their lives on the line and many times come back impaired than taking care of them. We have an obligation as a country to provide our military the best equipment, training, and defenses to protect themselves and execute their orders while they're in battle. But when they come home, we have just as much as a responsibility to provide for them to be able to get them back acclimated into our society. After World War II, you had the GI Bill, you had people go back to college, and look at the kind of economic expansion we had there. We need to take care of them, whether it's better funding and treatment in the VA, or whether it's educational treatment, going to college or a specialized group. But we need to, if you're talking about putting money into an area that the federal government should put money into, it's with our veterans.
Okay. How would you pay for that?
The federal government was created in our Constitution for a few specific purposes, and we should be doing those purposes great and funding those purposes fully. We should not be trying to solve all the social problems through the federal government, which is what we're trying to do now. We don't do anything very well. My dad used to have a philosophy when he coached basketball. He said, I wanted my team to do one or two things and do them great. And I love to play against a team that did 5 or 6 things because they can't do any of them very well. Well, the most important thing that our federal government was created for was protecting our national sovereignty and our borders, and that's our soldiers. That should be top priority. You pay for them first and you worry about everybody else. You worry about the next steps later.
Okay.